Hope you enjoy the videos.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. How are you guys doing? Hope you guys doing good. We've got a special show today here in the green room, and I'm joined by the Dr. Imran Rafiq. How are you?
Alhamdulillah.
Good, no shaking hands today.
Absolutely.
We're going to be talking about why that is the case. But before we do, inshallah, I wanted to, since we're coming out obviously from Islamic paradigm, if you like, there is a hadith of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam where he says, إِذَا دَخَلْتُمْ بِأَرْضٍ أو إِذَا سَمِعْتُمْ بِالطَّاعُونِ بِأَرْضٍ فَلَا تَدْخُلُوهَا. If you hear of a plague in a country, so don't enter that country. وَإِذَا وَقَعَ بِأَرْضٍ وَأَنْتُمْ بِهَا فَلَا تَخْرُجُوا مِنْهَا. And if it happens in a country whilst you're in it, so don't leave from that particular country or particular land, because ard could mean land. Meaning here, the prophetic advice for dealing with things which are infectious, things which are transmittable, things which can spread, is isolation. So that's the Islamic advice. Looking at the coronavirus as the example here, a quick question. First of all, what is the coronavirus? And a subsidiary question here is, to what extent now should we be thinking about isolation as a solution?
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum, brother.
Alaikum salam.
Two very important questions, and I'm glad you started with the hadith, because really as Muslims we need to be thinking bigger than this crisis and thinking about our lives in a bigger picture.
Yes.
So some very basic questions. So what is the coronavirus? So coronaviruses are a family of viruses that have been around, known for many years.
Yes.
They include things like SARS and MERS, which happened sort of 2003, 2012 to 17, which are sort of the more serious ones that we've heard about. But even the common cold falls into this as well.
Really?
Absolutely. So, and they're named after the shape. So they're shaped like a crown, hence the corona name. Like a crown.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So what's happened now is that there's been a mutation in a virus that's now transmissible amongst human beings. So this is started in Wuhan, Hubei province in China, and what really happened, we don't know the cause of this, but really from an animal virus, this has mutated slightly, and now become something that human beings can pass on to each other. And this virus is something that can spread quite readily. And that's the main danger from this. But it spreads quite readily. And also it affects people, particularly respiratory, quite significantly. And so isolation is a very important step now. I mean, the government's announced this, and we can talk about the government advice in a moment. But really, there's a couple of things that happen. So because this virus is tiny, as you would expect. So a human hair is about 75 micrometers in size, or microns in size. This virus is 0.1 microns, so at least 1,000 times less, many more fold. So something that's very tiny, and itself is, the way it's propagated is it enters your body, and this is important to understand. How is it doing this?
So how is it, you're covering here how it's actually transmitted? A lot of people do think it's airborne. Is it airborne?
So it's not airborne in the sense that the virus itself is traveling in the air.
Right, okay.
What happens is that when we cough or sneeze, we can generate some vapor from our mouths that can contain droplets of saliva. That in the saliva we can have the virus present. This will then do a couple of things. So one of the advices is to stay 2 meters apart, which is what we're trying to emulate here. And that's because that's probably the distance that if someone were to generate something, it would sort of fall down and settle before. So that's one thing.
Yes.
The second thing is, once these particles, so if you inhale those particles or you breathe them in, or this is how they would attach to the membranes inside your mouth or inside your nose, and then find an entry into the body. The other mechanism that they enter is they fall onto surfaces, hard surfaces, soft surfaces, and and the virus tends to last in varying times depending on the surface that it lands on. Depending on the surface, the time can vary. So people have given different times that you can, expect this virus to last. Anything between a few hours to a couple of days or longer. What then happens is we're going about our day-to-day business. We're touching hard surfaces, and then the virus is on our hands.
So it lasts for a maximum of 5 days, or?
So the data isn't clear.
Yeah.
So the thing to do is to assume that it's a long time,
Right.
so 2 to 3 days at least on any surface. Although it could be, some people saying less than 24 hours. 3 to 6 hours is on a soft surface as well. But the soft surface is much more absorbent, so they tend to absorb things, and you're less likely to get it by touching. Now, once you come into contact with that hard surface, you then have virus particles potentially on your hands, and this is where the hand washing is really important, because if you're touching things and then inadvertently, our habits are to scratch our nose, face, eyes, it will find its way, the virus will find its way into our system through the mouth, through the eyes, through the nose, because of handling. So a couple of things to do: keep the hands below the shoulders if you can, so try not to reach up to your face, and also wash the hands often. And we're being told this sort of,
and to do that with soap.
absolutely. And the reason, you're absolutely right. So the washing the hands with the soap is important, because what the soap does is acts as a detergent, and the virus itself is surrounded by a lipid layer, so a layer of fat or oil, if you like. And what that does is it contains on there molecules that the virus can attach to molecules in the body and to enter the body. So if you use a detergent, what you're doing is you're removing this lipid layer, so the virus essentially becomes inactivated because of that process, and it can't have that effect. So the washing techniques are quite widely described. We can talk about that a little bit later if you like. But the key thing is to make sure you have a good lather, you lather your hands well, and you wash for a certain length of time. 20 seconds is being described as minimum, but the longer the better, really.
So do face masks and stuff like that, does that help?
So that's a great question. And lots of people have been buying face masks. So face masks are helpful depending on who uses them. Like I said, the virus itself is tiny, and unless you have a mask that is able to inhibit that tiny particle from entering, the mask is not going to do very much. So what's the point of masks? So if you're a medical professional and you're in touch with patients all the time who may be coughing, who may have active symptoms, you're going to be at risk of having these particles that might be floating in the air from the coughing and the sneezing. And so you'd have a face visor with a mask that you'd use to prevent spread to yourself.
And is that effective?
That would be effective because you're minimizing the contact. You'd also have a gown, you'd have gloves, you'd be fully clothed with that, and you would change that whenever you come out of that environment, before you come out of that environment. So that's one set of masks that the health professionals would use. There are other masks which are like surgical masks. These don't have that fine filtering capacity, but what they do is they will prevent water droplets from entering that people can wear. And these would be people who are seeing someone who would be suspected of having the condition. So maybe GPs on the front line, etc., who would have this interaction. Mm-hmm. The average person on the street, should they be wearing a mask? Mm. So what you have to think about how this is transmitted and what the mask is forming. If you wear a mask, the only time it would be useful to wear it is if you're coughing yourself and you don't want to transmit these sputum particles or the vapor particles from the coughing to other people. So it's protecting other people from getting your virus that you already have because you're coughing.
So let's let people continue doing it then.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
The wearing it yourself, if you're asymptomatic, probably you're going to increase the likelihood of touching your face.
Yes.
Because people adjust masks without realizing. They don't obviously once the mask becomes a bit saturated with fluid, it becomes ineffective. And so people tend to also, when they're eating, they tend to remove and eat, and you're essentially contaminating yourself more. It doesn't really serve a purpose. So it's counterintuitive, but wearing a mask if you're asymptomatic probably is not going to do too much for you.
I want to ask a question about now closing down masajid or mosques, or any other religious place for that matter. I mean, obviously Boris Johnson has come out and said that we should close pubs and leisure places and whatever. He hasn't. I don't think he's imposed any law just yet, which might be part of the problem, which we might actually discuss later on. But in terms of closing religious places, what's your advice on that?
So I think this is pretty clear.
Yes.
And
absolutely, you should close it down.
Absolutely.
Yes.
So any way that there's a gathering of people, there is an increased likelihood of spread.
Yes.
So we have a measure of spread in viruses, which is called the RO value.
It's called?
The RO value.
Yes.
Or R0 value, R0 value, people. Right. This is really the number of people who will get the virus from any individual affected. So this virus has an RO value that sits between 2.5 and 3.5. So it's probably around about 3. So that means 3 people can get this virus from any one individual. So if you imagine there's one person with the virus, he'll give it to 3, he'll then give it to 9, he'll then give it to 27. You know how it's increasing.
Yes.